Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm your host, Richard Dugan, and I thank you so much for joining us on the radio broadcast at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on a Sunday and Monday mornings at 1 a.m. The broadcast podcasts are available on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, as well as richarddugan.com, the homepage, as well as the radio show's page. And we encourage you, if you can, to support us financially to keep the programs moving forward and take care of all of the ancillary things through PayPal and Patreon accounts. They are for your security as well as ours. We hope that you will do your part and do what you can if you feel led to do so. We'll even take energetic support as well. And we also encourage you to go to our guest's website. We'll be giving you that during the interview so that you can continue your evolutionary process. We also encourage you to spend time in meditation, in prayer, in just quiet time during 2020, the year of perfect vision, and the 2020s, the decade of perfect vision. And we hope that you will do that. Listen to that still small voice, that divine self, your higher self, and follow the promptings. And find that still, small, quiet, peaceful place where you can just relax and get a hold of what's really important in your life. We encourage you to do that. And we also encourage you to stay tuned to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan. Stay tuned. Today's program, I think you're going to enjoy. I know that I am. I always have enjoyed talking about this. And this is something that even one of our guests who I had a chance to interview just recently, I was so excited, but I kept a cool head. I got to interview James Redfield, author of The Celestine Prophecy. And he and I both talked about how we've got to get through this whole karmic thing. Not that it doesn't exist, it does exist, but we've got to understand it. Well, today we're going to. That's the reason I have our guest on the program today. She is going to share with us the ins, the outs, the A to Z, the 1 to a billion aspects of karma through a book that she has written, Conquer Your Karmic Relationships, Heal Spiritual Trauma to Open Your Heart and Restore Your Soul. Tracee Dunblazier, thank you so much for being with us today. Obviously, there must be some karmic reason we are together today.
Yes, indeed. It is a pleasure to be here. And it's such an important topic to shed a broader understanding, because people have a very, karma is a big buzzword, and people respond to karma as if it means punishment and reward. And it doesn't. Karma, it literally, the Sanskrit meaning is action. And the larger concept is an action taken creates a equal and opposing reaction.
Well, didn't Einstein say for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So karma then, as we relate to it, has to do with the patterns, the energetic patterns that we're born with that attract to us certain people, places, and things. It makes us attracted to people, places, and things. And it also puts us in a position to naturally respond to things in a specific way until we change those patterns. And so karma then becomes the way you respond and then the more you can understand how you naturally respond to things, the more you can decide if you don't want to do that anymore, or if you don't like what it's bringing to you, you can change it.
You know, that's extremely important, but it also opens up the door, which you knew was going to happen. It's going to open up the door to discussing past lives.
Yes.
Now, first of all, there is a process, I'll call it. A gentleman by the name of, I believe it was Dr. Newton, I'll verify that here in just a moment, having to do with a conscious hypnosis practice, if you will, or technique called LBL, Life Between Lives. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
You are?
I actually had, I wasn't familiar with all of his work, but I literally just recently purchased all of his books because we were I came in, my book took second to his book, one of the latest in the Life Between Lives series.
Wow. Well,
It's
first of all, I'm impressed that you are familiar with his work. Dr. Newton, I believe, from the Newton Institute, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe
I
that is
have,
correct.
yeah, I have several of his books on my Audible that I have listened to. Again, I went through with a local practitioner here in Santa Barbara, the LBL, which was fascinating for me. The thing that I love about it is not guided, not in the context of go here, go there, do this, do that. It's, we're going to take you back to your last lifetime. What do you see? It's all on you. And of course, I asked him a bunch of questions from the interviewer's perspective before we ever started. I said, well, how can you be sure that I'm telling you the truth? Maybe because I'm conscious, my mind is spinning. I'm, well, I'll tell him this and that. He says, I'll know. He says, I'll know. And so will you. And if you really want to get something out of it, then you want to be honest about it. Well, I lived on the prairie. I had a farm and a big barn and the whole thing. And it was pretty much just me. I don't even recall if I had any kids or a wife or anything like that.
Wow.
You know, I'd go into town and, you know, do the usual stuff, you know. And one day the farm, the fields and the barn burned, whether by accident, lightning or whatever, didn't matter. And I also had a cabin up in the mountains. And I said, okay, I guess my farming days are done because I'm not going to waste my time or spend any more energy. So I go up to the cabin and I'm there for I don't know how long. And one day I walk out the door, got my hat on. I sit down in the chair, lean back against the wall, as you see in the old Westerns, the old movies like that, put my feet up on the rail there, tip my hat back, and I say, it's been a good life. And I go. I just leave. And then the real experience begins where one goes through, I was told that in some cases the person will stay earthbound, maybe for, in terms of earth time, weeks or months, just to see, you know, how things are going. There's nothing they can do, but, you know. And then they'll go to the next element and the next place, if you will, where they will rest for a period of time. And that's subjective, up to them. Then there's sort of like the review. You remember the movie with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep about, I can't remember the title of it. One of my guests mentioned it to me, something about reviewing your life. And she's having the greatest time. She's eating whatever she wants because she knows she can't gain weight. Albert's going nuts because he thinks he's on trial. And he's going to go to the electric chair or something, you know, and it's a funny movie, but very profound. So you go through the resting period, you go through the review, and then there are classes. It blew me away. What do you mean? You mean, I thought the learning was just in this world. No. There's learning in that world too. And then, of course, you can choose to come back or not. And there's great encouragement for you to come back. But you don't have to. But they want you to go back because of what you've learned, to share with others. The question of karma, as we're discussing it here, and the way you phrase it is interesting. Conquer. Is karma really something to be conquered or more understood, so as to live our present life, I don't know, in such a way that is more fulfilling, satisfying, and I'm trying to use neutral words here from the standpoint that this world has its ups and downs. I am not a believer from the standpoint of dualism in this world. I accept the Hindu perspective that's all Maya. It's all illusion. Okay. And I won't go into the analogy of the macro world and the micro world and how we view them per se, but it's like when we do, it's like, wow, ooh, ah. But this world, when you have the same activities going on, it's like, oh my God, or ah. And it's like, wait a minute. I'm not saying we can't have emotions and express them, but so tell me why it is that, explain to us this concept that you've put in the title called conquering karmic relationships.
Well, because the idea, some people don't, it depends on your karma. If your karma is harmonious, if you have harmonious patterns, that bring harmony, bring joy, bring love, bring peace. Wonderful, right? You're in good. But many people, when people relate to karma, because they relate to it in such a way that it's punishment or reward, like I said before, that it's something to be overcome, I really wanted to address that first. In the book, I talk about all of the different types of soulmates. I talk about a person's relationship to authority, fear, hate, or death. So we have a karmic relationship to how we deal with our authority figures, what we do, what we think of them, how we address them, our immediate sense of being at ease or being on guard, being cautious, being distrustful or trustful, right? Those are all karmic patterns that we naturally bring in based on what you're talking about, past life patterns. I happen to have a life where I had many karmic patterns that were deeply distrustful and deeply unearthed, that I needed to unearth. And I am not an addict in this lifetime, but I have multiple lifetimes of addiction. So I was vehemently opposed to drugs and alcohol in my early years. I mean, I'm not completely opposed to them now, but I've never, I'm not really a drug doer. I need to be in control to the degree I can of myself and my situation. But that was a response to multiple lifetimes of heroin use, where I literally got clean in this lifetime spiritually. I literally had an experience where I went into a state of being for almost 3 weeks where I was getting clean from heroin, going through that withdrawal and the physical and emotional pain that one goes through in that withdrawal. And the reason why I did it in this lifetime is because I brought that energy with me, because I died in that state in another lifetime. And so that, when you talk about life between lives, I didn't really take much life between life at that time. And so I brought that with me to do it. I did the emotional work or the spiritual work to some degree in the in-between, but I brought the physical experience with me to bring me back to an understanding of a choice that I have to make about how I want to live in this world and how I want to relate to it. And how I bring my relationship to the spiritual dimensions, how I bring that here. Do I go to it, or do I bring it to me? And so in this case, like for me, I conquered that. You know, the word conquer is definitely an inflammatory word, and I mean that to get people's attention. But when you get into the book is always to bring you back to unity.
Yeah.
Unifying with yourself, with others, with understanding all the different dimensions of the world and how you interact with them.
Yeah.
So
well, you got my attention, obviously, because I focused right on that. And yet at the same time, I can certainly understand you want to get people's attention so that not just that they'll read the book, but also that they will contemplate some of these things. Yes. The whole, like, one of the things that I do in all of my writings, you'll have to forgive me, my cat is like losing her mind. We have actually had a cat on this program with one of our guests up on her shoulder, so they're always welcome. We have 5 of them at home.
Oh, wonderful. I'm gonna pick her up and
Sure.
oh, there.
Oh, beautiful. What is her name?
This is Gizmo.
Gizmo
is well, actually she's gender fluid, because it's actually a he, but I always end up calling him or her, and he doesn't mind, but he's like almost 21 years old, so he's lived, and I've known him since he was a baby, and he is certainly a karmic partner for me, for sure.
I'll bet. I'll bet you that he has been following you from lifetime to lifetime in human form or animal form. We had a cat by the name of Amos, and his partner was also a black cat named Andy. and they
Uh-huh.
were both, and she was a female, and they were owned by another gentleman who lived across the street from us and came to live in our home. And of course, Andy had passed, and he brought Amos
Right.
with him, and then our friend passed away in our home, and so his daughter gave us custody, if you will. We
Oh,
brought him with us to Santa Barbara, where, based upon our calculations, he lived to be 25.
oh my goodness gracious.
He was a great cat. Anyway, um,
Yes.
that's an area we'll get into also as far as animals are concerned in our karma in that respect. But relationships, right now, in this time in which we live, and first of all, I hate these cliche phrases. I wish I could come up with something new. But in the present moment that we're living,
Yes.
um, unless you are living as we do, for example, up on the mountain above Santa Barbara, in a rural
Hmm.
area, in a 2-room cottage. We also have a travel trailer and a truck to go camping and blah, blah, blah. Community is we're losing community because of
Right.
the divisions, not division, divisions. Pick a
Hmm.
subject and we're divided. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. One of
Yes.
the interesting things, too, that I find fascinating, and just point of reference for you, I worked for 15 years at a Christian radio station back in the 80s and early 90s. And the one phrase that keeps coming back to me, it's a biblical passage that keeps coming back to me over and over again. And this went back even prior to June 2015, okay, as the presidential race began.
Right.
A house divided against itself
Hmm.
cannot, not will not, cannot stand.
Yes.
And many people are right now, as you and I converse in the time in which we are talking,
Right.
are very concerned about our election and that it
Yeah.
won't make any difference. And I've heard this from people, and we're not going to get political here, but just talking about this aspect of karma and community and relationships. It won't make any difference who wins. It's going to be a mess. Not specifically the count and the elections and who gets picked, the public. I mean, look at the demonstrations we've had just in this past year,
Right.
even with the virus.
Right.
People are out there. Some of them a lot of them were wearing masks, and we got the Me Too and the Black Lives and the this and the that and the other. And it's like, you don't dare talk to anybody about anything but the weather, and even that can get you in trouble. Because
Right.
then you get into climate change, and I will
Right.
tell you about climate change. I don't talk about climate change. I tell
Hmm.
people, forget climate change, forget the science. Don't you think we should clean up our home? I mean, come on.
Right.
That's right. So I would venture that your observations of this divide we are experiencing, and it is, of course, not just locally, it's internationally. Um,
Sure.
that's part of the karmic. I don't want to use the word debt, but that's part of the karma that
It's a
we
pattern.
have chosen to karmic pattern that we have chosen to come into this world to experience
Yes.
and maybe to write, if you will, to
Yes. And
balance.
let's Richard, let's talk about one of the karmic patterns that we are really working to overcome. Is the concept it's kind of a Puritan concept from the 1800s and the early 1900s and all the way to the 50s of let's not deal with conflict. Let's not deal with illusions of gender. Let's not deal with illusions of race. Let's not deal with any of these things. Let's create this illusion that someone or something is superior to others, and therefore that is the guiding force. And it's the fact that we never learned how to speak up and to overcome the illusion of victimization on any level. Like every single human being, that's one of the things that's happening, is that people who have actually been diminished and marginalized, they're just not having it anymore. They're just not having it. And we are learning in this process how to communicate where we're at, what we need, and to create a life that is not based on what someone else does for us. right? Like everybody on the planet right now, but especially in our country, lives in some relationship to that pattern of either needing someone to do for them or being the one that must do for someone, right? But the idea that we must have one another, like there are people who feel like they must have the government in order to supply for them what they need, or that the government is going to protect them against whomever, right? There's all of this illusion that is in this relationship to authority. And it's that we just didn't learn. It was not okay to talk about certain things. That's one of the things that I talked about in my book, was that I grew up with these deep seated relationship to, I was sexualized early as a child, not by other people, but spiritually I had a deeper understanding that I had memory of from so early that it wasn't appropriate to talk about it. And we didn't talk about it in my family. The same thing with drugs. For me, my relationship to race is a very, I first of all, I don't believe in race per se. There are different ethnicities, but there's one human race. Mm-hmm. We don't really have a relationship to race because the majority of people have not had the opportunity to actually meet some of our intergalactic species. That's a whole other topic. We're not going to do that today, but if people have to learn how to address conflict within themselves so that they can learn to address conflict outside of themselves.
Well, it's interesting that you put it in those terms, because I'm one of those who doesn't want to deal with conflict, or actually more accurately, I find the concept, in spite of my ego my personality getting involved every so often and wanting to say or do something, because somebody did or said something. And I have to really go within and say, okay, help me to calm down, to understand that that's their perspective. It's not mine. It's okay that that's their perspective. They're only here playing their role, living out their contract, and there's nothing wrong with that. From the standpoint that every human being that's currently on the planet today has a right to be here. Right. And they have a right to speak out. So I have to calm myself down. But it's like, I want to, I guess I want to be the peacemaker on the one hand. And it's not even about, and to your point about these different issues that we don't want to deal with, I'm sitting here and I'm going, I am in awe of the Black community, the Hispanic community, the Asian, the whatever sect of the human species you want to mention, because they're still here. They made it. I guess one of the things that I get frustrated, especially when it comes to our African American community members, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, when I've talked with members of the LGBTQ community, we've had programs where they've been in the studio and before the COVID. And I used to say after the program, I used to say, let me just say, first of all, thank you for being on the program. And number two is, by virtue of the fact that you're a human being, you are a human being, right? You belong, okay? You belong here now, all right? Number two, you're an American. Yeah, then you belong, period. End of story. No more classifications, categorizations. That's it. But when I start hearing people, specifically those who don't want these divergent and diverse nationalities here in this country, I say, you need to take a look at your history. It was your forefathers who brought them here. So this is on you. This is your karmic debt, buddy, not theirs. They didn't want to come here in the first place in chains. Okay? So don't blame them. Take some responsibility for your life. Now, that's just my observation.
Absolutely. And I think when you talk about healing cultural trauma, which is something that's one of the things that we're doing in healing our relationship to conflict and authority, healing cultural trauma is a unique thing because we, especially here in America, it is still very white male dominated, but on subtle levels in ways that people, they want, like, Black and brown communities are not looking for mine or your approval. They don't need our certainly they want our acknowledgement, but they want, they don't need approval to be here. They just want to live in a way where they can feel free and comfortable to live in an equal society where they have the same opportunities as everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a unique thing to be able to have these conversations with people, whether you're in a cross-racial situation or you're speaking with people who are similar to you, that people need to find a way to reduce the shame. Every single person that is living today has some sort of bias or bigotry in some way about something. And our society, our culture has groomed us on deeply subconscious levels for hundreds of years. And so the goal is to not feel bad about ourselves and to feel shame that it is the way, because what people do with shame is that they want to overcome the shame by not dealing with it directly, right? Because that creates an internal conflict. So if you allow yourself to feel whatever it is that you feel, and then learn to recognize that there are things that you don't know that you in fact are participating in. Right? I think that's the most important thing for people to really understand, that we have a system of racism and bias in our country, that it's not perpetrated just by one person or just against all Black and brown people or only Asian people or all the stereotypes that we live in, but each of us have a relationship to the ways in which we are biased, and that is the only thing that we can control.
Yeah.
And through our own self-awareness of acknowledging what our own biases are.
You know, what's interesting, and I was just thinking about this when you talked about biases, there was one that was a very unconscious bias back when television was black and white. And I remember hearing about this. And I thought, wow, that's very interesting. The industry did not want blacks on television or in the movies because they were black and white, because they were difficult to film, because they were so dark. And they couldn't bring out their features because then there'd be too much lighting for all of the other characters and the scenery. That's, from what I understand, that's one of the reasons, okay? From a technical standpoint, it was difficult. Not today. And I have to tell you that I'm seeing not only, I'm seeing members of all of the, shall we call them disenfranchised or marginalized sects of humanity. I'm seeing more and more of them in television, movies, and commercials. And I have to tell you, though I never had any problem before, I have a greater appreciation. I mean, a matter of fact, I was at a store yesterday, and the clerk at the store had an accent, and this man was very, very dark. Okay? You've seen these people, these blacks who are, I mean, they run the range from light to dark, and he was very dark, but he had this wonderful accent. And I said, do you mind if I ask where you're from originally? He said, Haiti. I said, really? That, you know, and I said, you have a great day. I mean, I just thought, and he was beautiful. And I'm experiencing this greater appreciation for those, if you will, those skin tones, but they're human beings. It isn't
right
in that respect. I mean, with you, with your red hair, okay? And I don't care if it's colored or not, okay? the fact of the matter is I have an affinity for redheads, but that goes back to my third grade teacher. Anyway,
Okay.
it's one of those things where the more you see and experience
Yes.
this diversity, the
Yes.
less you judge them, the less you
Right.
categorize them. And when I hear
Right.
people criticize these black families with no father, where they're on public assistance, I say, wait a minute. Now, before you go too far down that rabbit hole, my friend, consider this. And this is part of what this program is about, Tracee. Giving people
Right.
choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. If
Right.
all you know from generation to generation is public assistance, and you don't know that there are other choices that you have, you're not going to choose them because you don't know they even exist. So that's what we want to bring forth on this program, is those choices. How is understanding our karmic pattern? Let me back that question up. What is one of the first steps one needs to take to begin to find out about their karmic pattern and then begin the process of shifting or eliminating, or whatever the right terminology is, so that they are no longer bound by that karmic pattern?
Yes. Okay. So the first thing, so to use you were just talking about black people or black and brown people on welfare. Of course, I don't actually have the statistics, but when we think of welfare, we make assumptions, especially white people make assumptions that it's urban people in cities on welfare, when the majority of people on welfare are middle America, and they are suburban and in outer, more rural communities. And many of them, and possibly the majority, I don't know the numbers, are white. So people make assumptions.
Wow.
So don't make an assumption, but educate yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the second thing is there's a fabulous phrase that they use in AA, which is, you spot it, you got it. So anytime when you acknowledge the beauty in someone, or you acknowledge, oh my God, they're poor, or they're leeching off of the government, or whatever dynamic you are sensitive to and reactive to, it's because there's something that you resonate with it. So if you see someone and they seem victimized, and that upsets you, the more that thou dost protest too much, the more angry.
Thank you. Yes.
The more angry, the more resistant you get to what you see, or the more over the top. Like people get angry, and they also go overboard, and how amazing and beautiful, and you're so great. The more overboard, like whatever it is that you are acknowledging in another person, you are on an unconscious level. Your unconscious self is letting you know that you have that same thing too. And if you are willing to go, oh, okay, so my response to this person is telling me what? What is it telling me about me? Do I feel beholden to have to be taken care of by others? Do I have to wait to feel like I have to have someone else give me a job to help me make ends meet, right? Am I in a position, one of the things that were really happening is that because of all of the earth changes, and because of this huge karmic set of conflicts that we are set up to deal with right now, the way in which we work, the way in which we make money, and the different things that we can do to make money are changing. So some of the major industries are completely going away, but others are emerging, right? And we've got, especially in, I'm going to say, like, 'cause I live in Los Angeles, so we have a melting pot of everybody here. And there's a lot more opportunity that you can create for yourself. But if you live somewhere where coal mining, for example, is your family has done coal mining for 4 or 5 generations, now they're having to change that. They're having to let go of what they have always done and never considered doing anything else. They're having to change that. And so how can we, like that's the karmic pattern. It's not to get a new job. The karmic pattern is, how do I think outside of the box I was built and brought into?
Fantastic. That's exactly right.
Yes.
What we preach on this program is just that. Get out of the 9 dots, step
Yes.
outside the box, whatever analogy you want to use, because yeah, it was cozy and it was secure and it was all of those things, but it doesn't serve you anymore.
Yes.
And whether it's your education, whether it's your philosophy that you live by, that you were born and raised into, whether it's your political affiliations. I have no political affiliations. And quite honestly, in spite of the fact that I can get into some pretty good conversations with people about it, I have to say that up until September of 2016, I would tell people, I don't care. I just don't care. It doesn't matter whether I care or not, because it's going to unfold the way it's going to unfold. And they say, well, but do you vote? You got to vote. I said, it doesn't matter whether I vote or not. It's going to unfold the way it's supposed to unfold. I personally believe in divine right order, and that I'm going to go within, as I've talked about before, about the decade of 2020, the decade of perfect vision. The place I am going to get direction and guidance from is not the government. It's not the church or the temple or synagogue or whatever. It's not even, as much as I am enjoying this conversation, it's not even you. And I love what you're saying.
And I'm not mad at you.
Yeah, it's going to come from within me. And I have had experiences where I was guided to do something that I thought, oh, no, I can't. I really don't want to do that, because I give all the reasons. And yet I'll go and do it anyway. And as time passes, I begin to realize, oh my God, if I hadn't done that, things would actually be even worse.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So my ego, go ahead.
I agree. I hear you completely. And I absolutely think that's true, but I also think that this is the time. There is no time like this one that we are living in, where everyone needs to participate in the system at hand. Because I think for many years, as an empath, I'm an empath, which means for many years, I just took on the energy of others to understand the deeper layers of my own experience and my own transformation. And I wasn't good at recycling. I wasn't good at taking care of the earth. I wasn't good at, I've voted. I've maybe missed a few elections when I lived in New York City. I've missed a few elections there, but there is no other time on the planet like this one. And everyone, regardless of whether or not you believe in the system that exists, the only way the system is going to change is if good people who believe in their divine self and the understanding and taking that they participate in the systems that exist.
Yeah.
That's how those systems are going to take place. Our politicians can only rise above our lowest common denominator. We can't have politicians that are these, profoundly evolved human beings on every single level, because that's not what politics is.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So unless those of us who don't want to rely on the government or don't want to rely on others, but are self-sustaining, or at least in our faith, we are self-sustaining. It's that energy that needs to be brought in to the systems at hand so that we can all raise it up. I would like to read you a quote from my book. That's part 3 is called Unity. And when I was contemplating unity, it came to me that unity is the coming together of all of the parts of ourselves, loved, misunderstood, and unknown. And that's what's happening right now, is that we are all learning to unify ourselves first to the things that we know and love, to the things that terrify us because we don't yet understand them, and to the things that we just don't know what we don't know, that other people mirror for us, right? That catches our attention because somebody's like, oh my God, did you see that? You know, when people talk about the phrase about Karen's, an entitled white woman, right?
Yeah.
And people like, oh my God, did you see that? Well, we're all doing that because there's a part of us, we may not feel that way about race, but we feel that way about people who are heavyset, or people who are short, or people who are tall, or animals, or whatever our bias is, we respond to these things, and everybody's responding in such a powerful way because we are unearthing these things these karmic patterns that we didn't know existed until we had the opportunity as a global community to have them unearthed in us through all of these challenges.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I participate in the various systems, but I also heard it said too, when we were discussing the evolution of man and the next levels of civilization and so forth, and of course the concept is that some people think that we need to tear down the old institutions and start new ones. And my guest at that time said, no, you do not want to tear down the old institutions.
Right.
You build new ones that make the old ones obsolete. That's what you do. You build new ones to make the old ones obsolete. And
absolutely.
What you're saying is so important for all of us to get. I mean, myself included. First of all, I have to tell you, I want to thank you for participating in this program and being my therapist, because these are my therapy sessions.
My pleasure.
They sort of keep me on the straight and the narrow, as it were. But also they are an opportunity for our listeners to come to what I call the smorgasbord table, or table of smorgasbord. I don't know which is which, but we keep putting new ideas onto that table. We ask people to come and take a look, take a little sniff, see what you think. If it resonates with you, take it. Don't have to take it all. Just take little bits and pieces, try it, see what you think, and then go. You can go away, but please keep coming back. And the reality from my perspective is, as you do that with anything, the more you do that, every time you take a piece, it's going to affect you. I used to say in a more sarcastic way, but now I say this with great love and appreciation for where everyone is. If you're listening to this program and you've come to this point in the broadcast, I have some bad news for you. You can't unhear it. And someday you will have to deal with it. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week, but someday it will come back to your remembrance. Oh, Tracee Dunblazier, she said this and that and the other thing, and that was similar to what this person over here just said in their present moment. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe I need to go back and either A, listen to that interview, B, look her up on her website, C, do some more research, talk to some other people, blah, blah, blah. And then that then propels them forward and forward and forward and forward. And I know that there are a lot of people that don't want to hear anything. They are set in their beliefs. They're not going to move. There's nothing you can say or do that's going to change their minds. And I have to say that one of the things that I find so fascinating is the blindness, the intellectual blindness that I hear. And this is from, it doesn't matter which side, and it could be 6 sides for all that matters.
Right.
When they start criticizing one of the other sides for doing this, that, or the other thing, and I'm going, but wait a minute, your guy or gal or group, they were doing that just the last cycle or the last term or last year. And it's like, but you're criticizing them for that, which there's some hypocrisy there, my friend, and you need to take a look at that. Don't criticize.
You spot it, you got it.
Because isn't that the finger pointing? As people can see, I'm pointing at you, but I got 3 more coming back at me. Threefold. Threefold. Think about that, folks.
Yes.
So we're talking about community. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about, before the pandemic started back in December, or January, whatever, um, there was a lot of discussion by programmers on this program, I guess on this program, talking about community, how important it is, getting together in small communities, breaking, so to speak, not literally, but metaphorically, breaking up the large cities like, let's say, Los Angeles. All right. Okay. And 500 to 700 of you, you go over here into the mountains, and 500 and 700 of you, you go over here and build your community over here, and da da da. And yes, it's a smaller group, more sustainable from the standpoint of you're not going to have quite the dynamics that we have right now in the big cities. Okay. The trauma and so forth. But that doesn't mean you can't interact with the other small communities of 500 to 700. I suppose it could go to 1,000. I mean, have you ever lived in a small town of 500 to 1,000 or 1,500 or what have you? And we were up in a place called Nevada City in Northern California when we went to Yosemite, and then we were taking some time off and stayed at a B&B up there. Mm-hmm. And it was wonderful. And I mean, it's like everybody knew everybody. It wasn't that everybody believed the same, but there was this common connection, and they cared about one another and what happened. And when the floods came, they were there to help one another and those kinds of things. Whereas in a big city, you don't have quite the same dynamic. It's just not there unless your neighborhood develops that. So that was one of the ideas by mm-hmm. one of our guests years ago, Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project. Talked about. Mm-hmm. He was a visionary and architect and so forth. Talk to us about how we can, do you think that maybe there is karma that will help us to go in not necessarily that direction? That's just my concept, and that's what I'm throwing out there, but mm-hmm. one that will allow us to grow consciously as a species.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing, Richard. If we can't find community with ourselves, we will never find community regardless of where we are. And that's the issue. You know, very possibly cities were created, like I think about all of the Old West towns, right? That were created and then burst into these huge, bustling throughways of, you know, products and commerce and people and stuff. But what created that was the tenacity and the, wow, what's the word I want? People who were completely shut off from compassion. You know, the industrial age, the industrial thinking, the industrialization of especially our country, but the world, is created by people who they're basically sociopaths, because they're not, their job is not to come in and have compassion for every other human being. Their job was to come in and to forge a new way and innovate what their concept of betterment is at the time. So, to answer your question, our goal is not to try to move these mountains. Our job is to go within to the little stream of compassion that runs through each of us, and create a way, move a rock, plant a tree, create ways that we nurture ourselves so that our compassion grows and we are willing to trust ourselves and ultimately other people to create a community with people we don't know. Right? If we can do that in our neighborhood, if we can do that with, you know, seeing people at the neighborhood store or whatever, if we can do that wherever we are, no matter how urban it is. I've lived in deeply urban, deeply run down areas, like literally burnt out neighborhoods for blocks. But I had more friends there and had more connection and community with the people there. There were packs of dogs and homeless people on every corner, and there was all kinds of things going on. But if you are present and make a connection, you make a connection. And so it's really about people learning to trust themselves, to learning to love themselves, to appreciate all the levels that they are, and to learn to balance their own relationship to fear. As you know, we never we always will feel fear at some point. It's about what we do with that fear. We allow that to move ourselves, to move through the fear, to do what is ultimately right for all of us, not just ourselves.
Yeah. There's
right?
there's an interesting dichotomy too, in this country specifically, that I have expressed on a number of occasions in the form of a question. I don't necessarily have the answer, but it's the question. First of all, you have in our founding documents, you have the First Amendment, which gives us freedom. In essence, to some people would interpret it to do whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, however you want, to whoever you want. I'm taking liberties, okay? Then there is the passage from the Declaration of Independence to promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So the question is, my friends, and to you, Tracee Dunblazier, author of Conquer Your Karmic Relationships, how do you balance those two philosophies so as, first of all, I'm going to answer it this way. I've heard people say, well, I have the constitutional right to da 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 da. And I say, you're not giving up anything by considering the needs and rights of others. In my perspective, Tracee, I'm not surrendering my First Amendment or my individual rights. I'm exercising them by considering the rights of others.
Yes. Well, first of all, the perfect answer to this is to wrap it all up, karma. Any action, you can go do whatever you want, but there are going to be consequences to everything that you do in ways that you do not know, in ways that you do not understand. So when you take an action and do not fully understand the impact it's going to have on others, you are unaware. Like a lot of people right now, that we want to talk about the climate change and all of that, but the truth is we are interconnected with us. And everything that's going on right now is a product of how every human being on the planet, and our impact on her. She is responding and she is affecting all of us as we are affecting her. Doesn't matter what you believe.
Right.
So whatever action you take, if you only consider yourself and no one else, there is a whole level of darkness for you to come. When I say darkness, I mean what you don't know that is going to impact you at a time and place of its choosing. Right? Yeah. So it's like when people talk about scary karma, that's it. It's what people are unwilling to know that is scary for them. When you have fear, it's because there is something there that you can feel its presence, but you do not yet know it in your mind, and you are not allowing yourself the curiosity and the open-heartedness to walk forward towards it in courage, in bravery, to have a deeper understanding. So every human being can do whatever it is that they want. There are, talking about karma and karmic patterns, someone who has been criminal for several lifetimes, they're going to come back at some point and feel the weight of all of the emotional content and conflict that they created for others. They're going to feel that. It's not that they're going to be punished. They're going to have the same experience of what they created in the world.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And that's, people have to understand that we have a lot more control of ourselves and our lives, and how you put yourself out there, right now, it's so important. And I have never been one of those people that's positive Polly, because I'm a realist. I see how things are, and I see how hard it is to overcome certain things, but I want to dig in and get to the truth of it so we can all move beyond it. But right now we are at a unique time where the magnetics of the planet have shifted so much so that our spirituality, all of the veils, all the things that kept us disconnected from ourselves and each other and the psychic realms, is changing and lessening. And so we are all deeply empathic and intuitive and available on psychic levels. Whether or not you believe it, you don't have to believe in psychic ability. You have to believe that there are, excuse me one second. You have to believe that there are, that there are radio waves that we all deal with, and electricity and the energy that we are all made up of all connects on some level. And that if you don't recognize it directly, you will recognize it indirectly, and that you're being impacted. You know, there all of the inflammatory language that people use right now, the mantras, the seed planting that we're seeing a ton of. You know, you and I are here doing that too, but we're planting seeds of self-empowerment.
Yes.
Right? Offering people the opportunity to consciously recognize that I don't care where you are, what you're doing, what's happening in your life, you have more power than you are owning right now. And so if there was ever a time, now is it. Step into it. And if you don't know what that is, say, spirit, self, hire me, talk to me, help me, walk me through this, show me. Right? Now's the time to step into it and be a part of the broader energetic systems that exist, so that you can benefit from the flow of energy that comes from that. The flow of energy means new ideas, new ways new jobs for you to do that you would have never considered before.
Yeah.
That maybe you'll actually like, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I might have digressed a little bit from your
okay. That's all right. That's
question, but freedom begins with what you give yourself first.
Yeah.
It really isn't about what others offer you. It's what you give yourself first.
That's it. I couldn't agree with you more. Tracee Dunblazier, author of Conquer Your Karmic Relationships, Heal Spiritual Trauma to Open Your Heart and Restore Your Soul. Put that up one more time, if you would, please.
Yes, I will.
Let me ask you.
So if I have a bunch of Kleenex in it.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Let me ask you, a great cover too, by the way. I like that that image. It's almost like you put two mirrors up to one another and they look into each other and they just go back and back and back and back and back and back. Very cool.
Yes, it's endless.
How is the health of your soul today?
Amazing. Amazing. I have a little story about that. I'll try to be quick because I know our time is almost up. But so when I first started doing this work and really investigating the deep, conscious, deep spiritual pain that I carried, there was all this talk about what would happen, what they called the end times.
Oh,
right.
yes.
But really, right. And really what they meant by the end times was a time where we would all have to become aware of ourselves on deep levels. And we wouldn't really, like, people don't get a choice about what they have to know about themselves right now. They're not, stuff's happening and you're having to step up and deal with it. But I always asked myself, I'm a person that I've cried every single day of my life up until about 5 years ago. Part of that is because my own deep spiritual pain, my empathy for others and their deep spiritual pain. But that was the way that I lived in that emotional content. And I always asked myself, like, how can I step up and be a leader with other people if I am in such devastation all the time? And so I always wondered what it would be like for me at this, in this scenario of what's going on. And so I'm proud to report that there literally a time and a day came where the spiritual work that I was doing, the result that it had created this lightning, this enlightening, this lightening up. The burden left. It went from one day to the other. The burden lifted from me, and it allowed me to see things not through that lens of pain anymore. I still had work to do. We all have work to do, and we all have to be present in our lives to really allow ourselves to own who we are and not give our power to other people, but to also recognize and have compassion for them. So I'm just proud. I'm proud to say that today occasionally I get weepy, but because I choose it, because I love it, but in general, I'm at peace with regardless whatever happens, with what people do, with how they are, because I'm at peace with myself.
Well, we thank you for sharing that piece with us, and the direction it ties right in with what we're doing here. And that is encouraging people to go within. That's where you're going to find that peace. That's where you're going to find that information, the guidance, the instruction, and all of those good things. I was in a program once back in I think it was in the early 80s, called LifeSpring. And there was an exercise where they gave you this big, long, rectangular piece of white paper and a black marker. And they said, we want you to write down a statement. And this was into the program a bit. And I wrote down in cursive, to listen to my friend. That's what I call my still small voice, my friend. And then in block letters, all caps, and follow the promptings. And I often say to people on this program, if you're not going to follow the promptings, and I say this tongue in cheek, if you're not going to follow the promptings, why listen? Okay? It's okay. Your still small voice, your higher self, your intuition is never going to put you in harm's way. It might challenge you, okay? Like it did me with what I described earlier. But it's not going to put you in harm's way. That's not its intent. It's intent for you to learn, to grow, to be who you are. And we thank you for sharing that through your work and the book that you've written about conquering your karmic relationships. And I have 3 final questions for you before we wrap this up. But I want to remind our listeners, this program comes your way Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m. Sound like an auctioneer, don't I? Also, podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, and many other locations. We're also on YouTube. Richard Dugan is the location of the channel. Tell Me Your Story are the videos, and we hope that you will go there to watch these videos and listen to the podcasts and listen to the streaming. It's just a lot of fun to do. I can't tell you how much I enjoy doing this. When I don't have interviews in a week, I start to get withdrawal symptoms, but it's great fun. I hope that you will join us, and I hope you can support us financially, folks. PayPal and Patreon accounts are there for your support, your security, as well as ours, and also participate in the 2020s, the decade of perfect vision, going within, as we've already described so much throughout this program. The first of my 3 questions is, who is Tracee Dunblazier?
Tracee Dunblazier is a person who wants to spread peace.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
I want for people to be empowered by them from themselves. It's one thing to be empowered from another person, but to empower yourself, to trust yourself, to embrace who you are, it creates a whole other set of opportunities for you that no one can offer you but you.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
To live, to be alive.
Well, Tracee Dunblazier, I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. This has been a great pleasure. And I thank you so much for the insights that you've shared with us as well. We look forward to having you back on the program in 2021 to talk more about this. Is there another book in the works, another idea that you've got that we need to be letting people know about?
Well, this one has been in the works forever, and it really is. The Conquer Your Karmic Relationships is really a manual for what is going on right now, and you don't even have to be completely present to read it, because you can read a paragraph and then put it down. Somebody said it's the book for the nightstand, and that's really true, because you take a little seed and then you move on. The next book that I am planning is one on grief and our relationship to death. Very good.
No, that's, and I say this with all due respect, folks, death and dying, or transformation, as I like to call it. It's a subject near and dear to my heart, not because I've experienced it or I've had a lot of people pass away, but because it interests me so much. When Michael Jackson passed away, just before my 49th birthday, kind of took the wind out of my sails. But my thought was, I wonder what he's experiencing. What is he doing? This was before my LBL hypnosis session. You know, I'm curious. I'd love to go there and find out. I want to come back. I'm not eager to leave. Don't get me wrong. I have to outlive my great-grandmother who lived to be 100, and I'm 60. So I've got another lifetime to go here. But I'm just curious as all get out what that is, what that experience is and what they're happening. And if the LBL experience is genuinely true and accurate, then I have my answer already. And I can trust that. I remember when, and bear in mind, as I said, 15 years in the Christian broadcasting industry in the 80s and early 90s, I got to know many of these local and national figures like Jerry Falwell. And the one thing that came to my mind when I heard he passed away was, well, at least now he knows the truth. Because I would venture that when you're on the other side, all that other stuff that was going on here drops away and you go, oh, okay. I don't know.
Oh, hey.
Really? Oh, I should have had a V8. Anyway, I thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great pleasure, and I do want to have you back again. And we look forward to doing that. And blessings to you as well. And blessings and thank you for listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to love.